right. There we go. Welcome back from the quick break. Everybody doing well? You know, Brian had asked me if I wanted to come up for that panel, and I was sitting there wanting to say so many things. So real quick, I was in Toys Fantastique. I remember the candle shop. I stayed at the, well, Hal said that only expensive people stay there, but I did stay at the villas and had a great time. And Tony's got something he's going to say about that. So I am really proud to welcome to the stage, again, this is his second visit here with us, Disney legend Tony Baxter. Good to see you again.
Hey. It's been 24 hours. Is this working? It doesn't sound like it.
Are we on yet there?
Yeah. Okay.
There. Is it good? There we go. There we
Some
go.
hands in the back? I don't think it is.
Volume up.
Volume up.
Up.
Yes.
Cowboy's working on it.
Crunching going on.
It's the rustling of paperwork.
I do not feel that reverberation that I should have.
Yeah, it's getting there.
Is it coming up?
Do we need a new mic?
New mic? All right. There, wait a minute.
Oh, there
I hear it.
Yeah,
I hear it.
Now we're going.
All right. Yeah, you know, one of the things, I love these guys. I think this is the greatest, I don't even want to call it fan event because you're not fans. You're more than that. You're part, as you said, a family. I get choked up when I hear that. But I learned something every time I come, and every person that speaks up here. And what was interesting this morning was I grew up in Santa Ana. Okay, so I'm going, what? Here we are, what, 2,000 some miles away. I grew up in that city. I rode my bike to Disneyland. I know those places he was talking about. And part two, I lived in the Lake Buena Vista Village condos for 9 months back in 1976 when we tried to salvage the submarine ride once again. So I put up with that music staying on at night, and they hadn't realized there are people now that they're putting into these houses that can't sleep listening to Frank Sinatra at 12 midnight, and I would have to call them. They said, "Oh, we're so sorry," and it would be every night. So
look at that!
Yeah.
You stayed in the place in Santa Ana. That's
Yes,
so cool.
I did.
So cool.
Are we gonna sit?
We're gonna. Well, so we can sit. Yeah.
Okay.
So we got a fun presentation. Many of you had, if you recall, last time we did an Ask Me Anything with Bob Gurr, and that went over really well. And we said, "Hey, Tony, he's coming back." He said, "Would you mind doing this Ask Me Anything?" So a lot of you called in, and oh my goodness, we even received a question for you today. We're not prepared to answer everybody's questions, but we might have you back on a podcast, and we can go through some of the other ones ad hoc. Yeah. So we're going to go through about 4 or 5 questions here, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the living seas and your early seas design. So this first question, we're going to play the audio here.
Yeah. So my questions for Tony are 2. The first question is, I'm curious how the Timber Mountain log ride at Knott's Berry Farm influenced your approach to designing Splash Mountain. I'm kind of curious, were there any design problems or flaws in the Timber Mountain log ride that you wanted to avoid making when you were designing Splash Mountain? And also the converse, was there any successful thing that ride did at Knott's that you really wanted to make sure worked in Splash Mountain?
Wow. Okay. I was there on opening day, and if you've seen Imagineer Chris, I've forgotten his name, Merritt's book, Knott's Preserved, he was going through their archives over there and found the opening day. John Wayne and his son Ethan were there, and I ditched school to go over there. And I couldn't figure out the ramp, how it worked. It wasn't a chain lift like a roller coaster. It turns out it's a rubber belt. So I had stood up on rocks. They didn't have handrails or anything, so I was up on rocks. So they took the big publicity shot with thousands of people, and guess whose head is about 2 feet taller than everybody else's? So it's in the cover of that book. But I was very impressed with it. You know, it was the first flume ride that had a show on it. The World's Fair in New York had a flume, and I think down at Six Flags in Texas. But nobody had ever thought the idea of doing a Disney quality show. And Bud Hurlbut, who ran all the attractions at Knott's, was very good, close friends with Walt Disney. And Walt would go over there every month to look at the progress on Calico Mountain, which opened in 1960. And it caused Walt to revise his Rainbow Caverns into Nature's Wonderland because he was so impressed with Calico Mountain. And Bud, I later learned a lot. I met Bud and learned a lot about it. And that was the first cue on the Calico Mountain that the guests were actually enjoying themselves. And Walt Disney told Bud, he said, you've got 500 people waiting in line for this, and they don't even know they're waiting. They're having a good time. Yeah, and I know he probably thought, I've got to do something about that. So I do think the rock work in Calico Mountain is a little better than the rock work several years, 8 years later on the log ride. And I honestly think that's because Walt wasn't going over there bugging Bud every single week. It's very interesting because, I love talking. But Bud would take Walt to a different restaurant every week, and soon people started to know they could find Walt Disney oftentimes at Knott's Berry Farm. So they could no longer go to the chicken dinner restaurant. They're getting farther and farther away. They got all the way up to Whittier, and a fellow by the name of Don Nixon owned this restaurant. And so it turns out, of course, he's Dick Nixon's brother. So he says, Bud, can you introduce me to Don? And so that happens. And, of course, Walt, never wanting to miss a moment, says, you think you could talk your brother into coming down and opening my monorail in a little while? So that, all these intertwined stories, but they were all good buddies, and they loved good work. And I think that the log ride really inspired me. There were a couple things about it. I don't remember flaws, unless you call getting wet a flaw, which we put that flaw into Splash Mountain, too. It was the dark drop in the middle of it, which in the first ride, when you take a ride like that, is a surprise. You don't know what's going to happen. You see the big one, which is put out in front as a weenie, I guess Walt would call it. But you went into the dark, and then while it was pitch black and you couldn't see the drop, down you went. And so I thought that was fantastic. And I figured, I never had the idea we're going to do one. The person who had the idea that we're going to copy that was Dick Nunes. And I really liked Dick. He always supported me and would put me on the stage and say, this guy scooped ice cream, so you all out there at Disneyland can do the same thing, So I was always dragged out for that purpose. And anyway, Dick, every time he'd see me, he goes, when are we doing the flume ride? We can't let Knott's Berry Farm have the flume ride. But my thought was, we shouldn't copy it. We've got to have an idea for it. So a couple of things collided, and the second was we had built America Sings, which went into the Carousel Theater that you saw earlier, and that had run its course. It was designed as a bicentennial-type show, and here we were in 1985, 86, and nobody wanted to talk about bicentennial minutes on TV and all that stuff anymore. So we took it out, and we were going to lose all those figures, and they were all designed by Mark Davis. And it turned out that Mark had also designed the movie Song of the South. So there was consistency. In fact, some of the characters that were in Splash Mountain, that were in America Sings, were also in the Song of the South. Yep. The little possums being washed, I think, occurred in everything. So this is the last day. Some of the people that are in this shot are in the room. Some of my good friends, to say goodbye. This is our very last day there. But it was the collision of Dick pushing me, of losing those very valuable Mark Davis characters, and the fact that Disneyland, as a company, was really worried about the imbalance of all the thrill rides being over on the east side with Space Mountain, the Matterhorn, and then over here, we only had Country Bear Jamboree, which was never as popular out there as it is here in Florida. And so that became the trajectory that you've heard the story of me driving up to Imagineering, Dick Nunes, getting him off my neck, saving those figures, and then putting a big, high-capacity thrill adventure over on the west side. Cool. Whew, that was long. Okay.
All right, here's number two.
The second question I have is this. On a podcast a couple of years ago, I heard Tony explain how Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland has a very dreamlike and ethereal quality. It's just very emotionally powerful. He said that a big part of that is the descent down and the ascent at the end of the ride. which I think Tony says is part of why the original Pirates is superior, in his opinion, to the Florida version. I'm just curious how Tony approached designing Pirates at Disneyland Paris when he was deciding how to make that fit as far as the dreamlike quality that he loved so much in the original, and if he feels that he captured that in the Paris version. All right, bye-bye.
Okay, just a minute here. Yes, I agree. I'm not going to take back anything I said. I do think Disneyland's Pirate Ride is almost a visualization of drifting off into sleep, into REM sleep, and then having this whole incredible thing happen. You're seduced in the Blue Bayou, and then you kind of drop down into I'm in some alternate universe, but it isn't real yet, with a cave with all the skeletons, and then all of a sudden it becomes very real. And then like Alice in Wonderland at the end of the movie, you're kind of yanked out of it with all the characters behind you squabbling and everything, and you drop back into, did that all happen, or was that a dream? I've never thought it was cinematic. It's more dreamlike. So when the question was asked, how do we take this to either in the case here in Walt Disney World or Paris or Tokyo, where they all have water tables. There's no such thing as water in California, so we don't have that problem. And I found this ancient drawing by Herbie Ryman, and I went, what is that? And it showed all the people going up. Now think for a minute when you're on a roller coaster. You might first say, oh, the most frightening, scary part is the drop. But I honestly think the most frightening, scary part is going up. Now, if you put that at the end of the ride, it becomes boring because you know, oh, I've had all the fun, and now it's over. And Walt knew that. And when they did the television show, slightly after he passed away, to shill Pirates of the Caribbean, they actually put another waterfall at the end of the ride. And he said, now, you know, you go in here and it goes down into the explosions and all that. Well, that's not there in Disneyland. It's nowhere except in Paris. So when you get a second chance to do something, you're looking for, we can't go deep, or we end up with what the problem we have here at Disney World, where getting that one drop was really hard because you're now pumping out. You have some pumps in there trying to keep the water out of the basement. So in Paris, we would have had the same problem. So I worked with Chris Tietz, and we decided, what if we go up at the beginning, and then we have that scary thing, oh my God, we're going up, something bad is going to happen. And all of a sudden, we found in the archives this painting, and it was like, Herbie was long gone at that point. And I think he was still around. Was he, Tim? Tim? Yeah, he was. But we found this in the archive, and I said, maybe this is what we really need. And so we pulled this out. Chris figured out how to take you across the Blue Lagoon over there, not the Blue Bayou, and then go up. So everybody at this point isn't bored. They are going, uh-oh, something's about to happen. And then, as an homage to Walt, the very end of the ride, we kind of reversed the whole psychology of it. So you're going up there to free all the pirates that are in prison. We see them with the dog and all that, and they're swinging in. And then we go out into the city, the big explosion and all that, down Walt's second and never seen before waterfall into the cavern with the skeletons, which is sort of a moral to the whole story, which is dead men tell no tales, And so that was a flip, and it's not as dreamlike, but it brings something else. So they all have their own, special features.
All right, we're on number 3 here. It's a shorter question.
I hope so. It's not a shorter answer, though.
This is Chris from Ohio, first time, long time. My question for Mr. Baxter is, with all the different variations of Big Thunder across all the parks, is there any one aspect, one of the variations, that he would like to see implemented in all of the rides? Thank you. That's
easy. Paris. And if you haven't been there and you love Big Thunder, shame on you. It's clearly the best one, and let me explain why. When you build a roller coaster with 3 drop sequences like we have and lifts, the third and last one should be the climax. It should be the best part, because most roller coasters get gradually less and less as they lose energy. And Big Thunder here and in California and Tokyo is no different, in that on that last drop, you have to save enough energy to propel you out of the station and get you back down to the first chain lift. So that means it's that much less thrilling than the other two. So we spent, this is like, how many years? It's like 92 from 79. So we had like 14 years to figure out how do we solve that. And because this is the only park where Big Thunder was built on opening day, I said, let's give it the best spot in the entire land. So we put it in the middle of the river, which ignites energy for the entire Frontierland. So everywhere you go, you're hearing all the excitement from that ride. And my ulterior motive, here it comes, to get out there, you have to dive under the water deep enough to get below the boat clearance. And then at the end of the ride, instead of kind of going through that very timid ending of the ride back into the station, where here we tried to goose it up with the what do you call it, the geysers. In California, we have the dinosaur with the splash effect. But we were able to, take you into the same snow shed. And what's great for people that are expecting California or Florida, they're ready to go, that was great. Instead, you dive down to the highest speed I think we achieve in any roller coaster. Maybe Space Mountain over there exceeds that, or the new Guardians of the Galaxy. But it's the highest speed definitely in Paris and on Big Thunder. And people pop out of the ground back on the street side. And I love the expressions on the faces right there, because it was totally unexpected. And so that's definitely the one. If you're a fan, you've got to do it.
Yeah, I said it yesterday, I'll say it again. Big Thunder is the funnest roller coaster on any Disney property. I'm sorry, I know everybody loves the new stuff, but it's just so well done.
Well, it's very compelling, I think, to ride over and over again. Because there's, it isn't like someone said, there's surprises. There's the head knocker, there's the goat trick, and there's the flaws in the track, which I hope they don't remove when we get to ride.
And just so much playing with space and things close to you and far away from you, and timing and watching the other cars go by.
When we talk tribal knowledge, Claude taught me that, like in the Great Pirate Ride that he did in Disneyland, taking you down to that narrow point in the caverns, and then you hear that chilling voice go, "No fear have ye of evil curses." And then it opens up into the most spectacular indoor, outdoor pirate battle ever staged, which Goonies copied, by the way.
All right, so number 4 here, another Chris, how these got selected, not by name.
Hey guys, my name is Chris Domino, but I had a question for Tony Baxter. Did he ever hear music? Anytime he was designing something, does he have a musical inclination to know what he wanted the sound of, perhaps the production to be, not just the aesthetics? And was he ever involved in that when it got to that point where they were trying to figure out how do you actually make this thing complete?
I'm not going to pretend to be anything like Russell Brower, and his skills and everything, but it is so important. Is there anyone in this room who has not seen the movie Jaws? No. Okay, when the opening experience with the shark is about to happen and the girl is out there swimming and it's a placid night, if you heard Hawaiian music, you'd expect her lover is going to come out and it's going to be a lovely moment. But John Williams changed history that in that film, and what that pulsing, throbbing moment that you knew where the crescendo was going to hit is going to match the attack. And so that da-dun, 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 da-dun. In a ride, you don't have the luxury of understanding dialogue. And in a thrill ride, you have really only one concern. Am I going to live? Am I going to get wet? And I don't care what they're talking about off board. I'm only going to, worry about getting through this thing. So music becomes a narrator and an ability to guide the guests emotionally through an experience that matches nothing. So I picked a couple of things here. Because of the Seas Pavilion, this one is what I call, when you're starting, I don't like to say the blank piece of paper. That was Marty's thing. I always feel we have a lot of really strong guideposts. And in the case of the Living Seas, we're in this thing called Future World, and we're going to be talking about a subject based on the ocean. And so I try to find something that either cinematically or, on television or whatever, that I can link into my head and begin to get a feeling for where we're going to go with this. And the first scene we had, and we'll talk a little bit later on this, about the 7 great seafarers. I remember an obscure thing in Disney So Dear to My Heart, where they talked about Christopher Columbus. And we had this opening scene with the 7 seafarers. And once I got this into my head, I knew what it was going to feel like to be in a revolving theater, a big 180-degree segment, and then it transforms and moves you around into part 2. I think we have a sample of that.
We do here, yeah.
Said stick to itivity. If you got that stuff called stick to itivity, you're going to do all right. Old man adversity, gonna have his bluff called stick to itivity. Never lost a fight. Yes, sirree. Yes, sirree. Yes, sirree. You can clear the deck for opportunity by applying stick to itivity. If you got that stuff called stick to itivity, you're going to do all right. We're going to do all right.
So you can kind of see how that's upbeat and it's inspirational and it gives people a new word like the Shermans used to do. It's something that if you really do stick to things, and it's something that you've heard again and again from people up here, if you just cave, it ain't going to happen. You know, you've got to keep fighting for things. And so all of these people that we were going to talk about in that segment conquered knowledge about the oceans and brought us to the table where we are today. This was my first concept before we knew what we were doing. So again, if stick-to-itivity was a oral, image that started to give me some thoughts, I put together, we had just gotten through the Arctic in submarines. We had, I love the Poseidon references, and I guess I'd call him Triton today since that's the official Disney version of Neptune. But these were just some images about underwater exploration. You can see the theater that would revolve through this whole thing, and just a beginning place. And I don't think it ever was a blank sheet of paper. It was like, how do I get these things both verbally and musically and visually to start to be something that other people can buy into the emotion of it and take it further.
And I think we have 2 other music clips you want to talk about, right? Well, you tell me when to start.
All right, so the next 2 are a good example of stick-to-itivity. The first is a good song, and I think you'll recognize the second one as a great song. And it would have been real easy to say, yeah, that's okay, I think that's going to work good. And it was done by Bob Moline, who did most of the Epcot music. So I was like persona non grata when I said no. So maybe a lot of you haven't heard it, but here it is. Let's all take a journey into imagination.
Let's all take a journey into imagination, where inspiration goes far beyond our world of space and time. Get on board, we're gonna find some brand new creations, new sensations you can feel without a reason or a rhyme. Imagination is the magic key that can turn your dreams into realities. Imagination films your fantasies while you soar above impossibilities. It has no limitation, needs no explanation, comes before creation. It's called imagination.
Okay, so if you look at the 2 characters there and you listen to that music, there's nothing wrong with the music, but it doesn't amplify the feelings we wanted for those characters. And again, in a ride that's amazing, and are we moving, is the dream vehicle moving, or whatever, people are not listening to lyrics, so you have to get it through in the feelings that come through music. So I don't need to introduce the second one, but here it is.
Come on, everybody, let's
We all have sparks, imagination. That's how our minds create creations. Right at the start of everything that's new, one little spark lights up for you.
Oh, boy.
Imagination, imagination. A dream can be a dream come true with just that spark in me and you.
Yeah, we had to do this.
When Russell was talking about Buddy Baker and how he couldn't believe it was with him, this was my introduction to knowing Richard and Robert as friends. And to have someone say, is that hibachi restaurant down by your house still give free chicken dinners on your birthday? Yes. Okay, we're coming down on Saturday. And, that was just unbelievable. You know, these people made my childhood, and we're having chicken dinner at Hibachi Steakhouse. Crazy. All right, so
this is the last question, then I'll let you guide us through your version of the C's. So yeah, let's take a listen.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Tesner. I have a question for Tony Baxter. I wanted to know if, as an Imagineer, how did he stay committed and creative with his work when the company revised his brilliant imagination pavilion, leaving out the main characters and all that was unique and creative about the pavilion, while leaving the guests who love the pavilion completely heartbroken, and continues to leave it lacking quality even to this day?
That's a heavy question.
That's one of those, well, this is more of a statement than a question.
before I say anything, could I ask all Walt Disney World management people to leave the room? It's interesting because I'll try to dispel a few things. I was alerted to the changes by the Kodak representative, Bob Gibbons, who were still very good friends. And he said, I don't know how to get through these people. They don't understand anything about what made this ride right. And I will tell you that Bob was my best partner on this thing in terms of the philosophy of it. Kodak at that time was America's storyteller, and they wanted imagination to show that all of us can be imaginative. It's not something that the current version sort of says, you don't have any, and we're going to show you a skunk, and we're going to show you a train. And now you're imaginative. I don't understand what's going on in there, but neither did Bob. And I said, rewrite it, and I'm going to send your letter on to management because I'm not working on it, but I will send it to management. So write it knowing that it's going there. And he got a call from Bob the next week saying, I've been taken off the project. So he was told that when it opened, he would be able to comment on it. And he said, I don't know what I was going to say. And it turned out the ride that he went through was with the people that he needed to say it to in the same car. So when they stepped out, he said, I just looked at them and I went. And 2 days later, I said, you're redoing it, and we're not paying a cent to have it done. So unfortunately, Kodak was kind of at the end of a dynasty when digital, they didn't step on board. What I can't understand now is that this has been in there longer than the good ride.
Yeah.
And, we're in danger of building children that don't know what Figment was. And I want you to go to the next slide, because one person who may be in the room, Jason, are you here? They need to give Jason the keys to this attraction and let him do what he's put into this little golden book. I cried when I read it. Yeah, it's everything we wanted it to be.
Well, hopefully we see some changes in the future.
So it still lives, and there are people here in the company that still believe in that original thought. And for every Figment, you need a dream finder. And it doesn't work with Eric Idle, I'm sorry. You can't have a Laurel and a Laurel, or a Jerry Lewis and Jerry Lewis, or a Abbott or Costello and Costello. You've got to have the partnerships, and that's what makes it work. And I don't understand why. I can't tell you why, but it was very disheartening.
All right.
I hate ending on a downer.
Oh, we're gonna move it up.
Go
now.
buy the book. I don't know if he's got it in the Buena Vista thing.
So I'm going to hand you, we have about 15 minutes here to go through Tony's original design and thought process for the Seas Pavilion before we talk with two others about the Seas Pavilion as it opened in Epcot in 1986. So I'm going to let you drive.
Okay.
You got 15 minutes.
Oh, I have to. What do I do?
Just the green button.
The green button.
Yep.
Maybe the red button if I screw up.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't hit the black button, then everything goes blank.
Okay.
Why is there even a circle slash button on there?
no.
That is the weirdest thing. Oh, there's a no button. I like, don't
Okay,
put the
this
button.
one.
That's that one. Yep.
And then
That's the back. Yep.
that's the back.
Yeah, yep.
All right. Hopefully I won't have to push the back. Okay. So we go back to what I was telling you about the 7 seafarers and challenging the riddles of the ocean. And my feeling is to get people to ride things over and over again, there has to be something really aspirational about it. And I think the most aspirational attraction that still survives from 1955 is Walt Disney's original Peter Pan, which you have down here too. It's a very simple thing. It's not about backstories and all that. It's just, come on, everybody, here we go. And then you fly out of a bedroom window, out over London, and off through the stars to Neverland. And nobody said it better than Ray Bradbury, who wrote Walt after writing it, and said, Walt, I'm eternally grateful for what happened today. You let me fly out of a kid's bedroom window in a pirate galleon out over moonlit London on its way to the stars. And that's only a science fiction writer could write that. But right now, I can tell you there's an hour worth of people waiting to ride that 1971 ride here. And in Disneyland, there's an hour worth of people waiting to ride that 1955 ride. So at the beginning, before you figure all the details and ride systems and all that, you look for something. So I figured if you were queuing in and you went through the 7 seafarers and the music, then it revolves and it brings you to the door at the threshold of our great sea, god, which is, today I'll call him Triton. I think back then he was Poseidon, but since Little Mermaid made it a Disney character, probably if it went in IP-wise today, it would be Ariel's Triton, Dad. And to get the feeling, again, to me, it's every one of these things is about emotional feeling, and that's what drives you back, because you want that feeling. The reason the 10 Commandments is still on ABC every Easter is because everyone gets that feeling when you wait 3 hours through a movie to get to that 4th hour where he stands on the rock and says, 10 times you've defied, and still you don't believe. So now watch this, and the whole the ocean opens up. When I was 8, I went to the theater 4 times to see that. A 4-hour movie and an 8-year-old kid and a lollipop. That was, and so I thought, well, all right. So if we could somehow have that emotional feeling, they've gone through a theater show, very expected, the kind of thing you expected at Epcot. You come into this room, there's the biggest figure you've ever seen in your life, and he gets angry at man and said, the only way you can understand the riddles of the ocean is to see it from my viewpoint, and throws that Triton out, and the water literally erupts and parts, and you're walking out into his kingdom. And so that was what I just kept thinking about, that, and how you got to see this thing. You're not going to believe what happens next. And then you get this thing where you just want to do it over and over again. Well, the end result, of course, was you have to have a payoff that works to the whole idea of technology. So I apologize for this. I can't draw people, so I always turn them away from the camera and have them facing the other direction. And this probably would have been Photoshopped today, but we didn't have any of that. So I think it was cut and paste to kind of show what would be awaiting you after you went through the story of the oceans from nature's perspective, personified by Nemo. And then Nemo, get that out of my mind here, by Neptune. And then you'd actually have a very technological story at the sea base. And we had no idea who might or might not sponsor it. So I had no clue as to what you'd talk about. And that was kind of where I found Kim Murphy, because he was brought in to kind of partner with us on what would you do if you had a thing where you wanted to show people the technologies of tomorrow. So that beginning relationship, I think it was back in 1976, is that frightening, was a relationship we're still extremely good friends to this very day. Here was the original plan, and of course, as budgets tightened up, about, I'd say, 3/4 of that track disappeared, but it was very Fantasia-like, and it took you through the riddles of the ocean, kind of to a bolero-like music, and you entered the pavilion and went through several experiences, which I just described to you, the 7 seafarers, and then the introduction with Neptune, and then into a pod ride, which is essentially this. Ours was like a pearl, kind of like if you imagine a Haunted Mansion Omnimover disguised as a pearl, it was like that, and went through the whole symbiosis and riddles of the ocean. We had a Shame on You Man section where you went through a garbage pit that showed what kind of a mess we were making of the ocean. And then we had a very stylized coral reef in that yellow area that then segued into the real coral reef in the sea base. It was all done to the music bolero. Again, dun, da, 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 dun, da, 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 dun. So it was a rhythm of the ocean, I thought, was in that. And those kind of things never maybe make it to the finish line, but they inspire all of the people to get an emotional feeling about what it would be like on the ride. This was the very first, apologies, Tim, this was the first one made out of little styrofoam bits that was on the model to kind of demonstrate kind of the, what would I say, natural forms of the ocean rather than a concrete building. And here was a really beautiful, this model was one of my favorite models that we ever did, that shows you the 180 theater where you saw 7 seafarers and it revolved you around into Neptune, and then you stepped out into his kingdom and then went through the tapestries of the ocean into the coral reef.
Oh, quick one. Was the intention always that the tanks area would be open air, or was that just like a lift-off section?
No, we had a piece of slate plexiglass that looked so much like water that we didn't want to cover it because then the model wouldn't be interesting. So, like the rest of the ride, all of that would be indoors too. So everything you see there would have been under a roof. Here was the theater, and on that choral part of the stick-to-itivity, on the final one, yes, sirree, and then the theater would begin turning as the tsunami wave swept you into Neptune's world. And this is Neptune's world, and this figure was about 20 feet tall, and the thing that's, I think, would have been really fun to do, and you heard about Mark Fuller yesterday, and I was dangling a carrot in front of Mark saying, all of the fins on Neptune would be kind of laminar flow water fins. If you've seen a laminar flow, it's a very glass-like surface. And when Neptune got enraged, we'd turn the volume up, so all of the fins flared way out. And then when he got docile, they'd all reduce down in. I think that would have been a way of really amplifying this giant, powerful figure. Down below is a view that from a close-up of the one that I had done, and I think that was sculpted by Joyce Eddington. And the other one, I don't know who did that. I'm apologizing for that. I didn't know that Chris had done one, Runco. He showed it to me when we were getting ready for this. I would have changed that out and put Chris's in. Everyone got excited. See, that was the thing. I didn't know anything about Chris saying that, but that whole idea of getting people excited emotionally, he just went back to his job in effects and went, I've got to get this out of my system. I really feel that. And I think that was what we were trying to do at this stage of it, because there was no money, there was no reason to do this. Man was represented as this terrible thing, a dragon. I love dragons, and if I ever come back again, we'll do a panel on dragons. But, that was man, and he was polluting the ocean, and so that was the antagonism between our Neptune figure and this representing man. So here are the guests walking out to the pearls, and I just think I'd be looking forward to that every time I came, walking down through all of this abstract coral reef, into this amazing ride. So I had to inspire myself. I guess that was the thing. So we get out there, and I'm just going to go through this quickly. It was sort of big fish eats little fish, the symbiosis of how it begins with the algae and goes up through the biggest groupers and sea creatures. And of course, we have to take you down into a black light area just because it's cool, even though it's not really important to the oceans, but it's part of like giving people a really fun time and wanting to come back. So things that pop out in the dark happened in here. And then, like I say, dun, 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 look what man is bringing to the ocean. So that was kind of the nadir of the ride. And then we have to pull you back out of that through a vortex here where you're pulled back up to the higher, what would you call higher depths? The shallower areas where the coral reefs in the warm water survive. So we had, the first part was a combination of film and dimensional sets that gradually transitioned into the very strong reality that would happen in the sea base.
What was your what did you imagine for the size of the sets? Were you smaller than life, or was it supposed to be?
You were at the scale of the objects you were looking at. So
okay.
If it was like the level of algae or small fishes, you were frightened by the groupers, which were big enough to eat you. And so we just used that. I had that discussion with George Lucas. We have a minute here to talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah, he was really bothered in Indiana Jones in California with a giant snake that's 50 feet long. And he said, we didn't violate any reality things like that in the movies. Well, you had heads that melt and stuff like that, but I'm not going to. So I said, okay. And so we had a standoff, and we put 1,000 real-size snakes in that room. They're still there. Next time, try to not look at my 50-foot snake. Look at his 1,000 real-size snakes. And I said, but in the film, you're able to go in for a close-up, and that cobra facing Harrison Ford fills a 50-foot screen. He goes, well, And when you get on the ride, if I'm out where you folks are, the snake that's 6 feet long is just a tiny little, pipe. And you're hanging on for dear life, and you can't focus on that. So he said, if the 50-foot doesn't work, we're taking it out. And so we rode the ride. He goes, I guess you were right. But so I've thought cinematically, because I've loved film all my life, and in a ride, you have to perform that aspect of zooming in and zooming out so that it resonates. An audience can look anywhere they want. They can look at the speakers, as Russell was doing in every ride through Pirates, and I can look at the lights that should be hidden that I can see shining on the sets, taking me out of the mood. So you've got to do everything you can to try and direct people where to look. So the intent here would have been the same as with that serpent in Indiana Jones, to dramatize the fear of being eaten by a grouper and communicating with the algae, so that was the goal there. And then this is that model that you were talking about. And this went to New York, and it was sort of the dangle the carrot in front of American industry, and maybe we'll get someone on the hook. And that's kind of where Kim comes in the picture, because once we ended up with United Technologies on board, I had long since moved on to some other things. So I think we have a few of those in here, do we?
I think so.
Yeah.
We get down to this.
So this is, again, a view of that model. I never get sick of looking at it. I still would have liked to have walked down through Neptune and into that. I think that would have been still running today, I bet. We wouldn't have needed Nemo.
That's right.
So we're going to bring...
So you, at one point, had to, as we would say, hand the keys to the seas over. And our next presentation is Kim Murphy. I'm getting the Kims and Tims. And Tim Delaney. But we'd like to have Kim Murphy come up to the stage now and join us. So, yeah.